Welcome back to Eat Street Game. My name is Luke and this is Just a Thought, a new series I'm doing where I give my thoughts, ideas and opinions on certain gaming matters. Today's subject is the WWE 2K series. Now 2K21 has officially been cancelled and WWE Battlegrounds on its way to fill that gap. Now is the perfect time to reinvent the simulation age in WWE games, which hit its peak in 2014 but has really regressed since then. Quick disclaimer, I won't be talking about visual improvements and bug fixes because they should be a given and hopefully will be addressed by taking the year off from the franchise, as Visual Concepts decided to use the 2K18 engine when they were given the reins after Hughes got thrown under the bus out of nowhere. With that in mind, here are 7 ideas to fix the WWE 2K series. First and probably most obvious, WWE games are ripe for the live service treatment, just like most sports games are really. I honestly wouldn't mind buying into a subscription or a season pass sort of thing that would include updates to rosters, attires, themes, match types and the like. Because as great as community creations can be, they are really limited in what they can do because of the tools at their disposal. It can be really annoying when certain wrestlers are left out, whether it be because they're injured at the time of development or they came into the company a little late. A live service would negate this issue largely, as they could update the roster throughout the year without having to worry about that sort of thing happening. This would also likely give the devs a little bit more leeway and time to fix issues in game rather than having to put out a game, getting a really limited amount of time to fix them and then move on to the next game in the series, because we obviously don't need a new live service WWE game every single year. This would also potentially allow the devs more time to work on bringing us new modes and match types, which has been a huge criticism for a while now, with each new title bringing with it less game modes and less match types when the opposite should be true. The main issue with these 2K games is that their yearly release only leaves about an 8 to 10 month development cycle, which is just not enough to fix the previous year's issues. So we tend to have the same game with largely the same issues, if not more, especially in the case of 2K20. Now with the announcement of WWE Battleground, it would be beneficial for both styles of game if 2K adopted a Call of Duty style development by having the more sports style of 2K20 launch every 2 to 3 years with an alternative title launching in between. This would fit in nicely with the live service model as well, as it wouldn't require a new game every single year. Also, let's get back to the slightly more outlandish games of old. Get a bit more experimental with what was available, just like the Def Jam games for example. Perhaps even find a way to do a wrestling based story driven RPG, or a side scrolling Metroidvania like Guacamelee, or maybe even try a WWE karting. Yeah, wait, maybe not that one.
But now, can Drew McIntyre capitalize?
While there is merit to simulation style games, the 2K titles haven't felt really all that fun to play since its peak in 2014, gradually feeling more and more robotic and scripted with each passing year. And granted, while actual pro wrestling is scripted, you don't want your games to feel that way. With this gap here, now is a perfect time to reinvigorate the often monotonous gameplay. The foundation is solid, it's just the lack of development year after year that has really hindered the evolution of the foundation. A more fluid system would do the world of good and make movement feel more natural and less robotic. Another way to make these games more fun is to add new modes and match types. For the past 2 or 3 years it feels like we're getting less variety in what we can actually do. I would also bring back the Road to WrestleMania mode. It was cool to have 4 or 5 shorter campaigns focusing on different wrestlers and the new stories of their path to the show The Immortals. That being said, while I like the idea behind the 2K originals, which was a series of short fantastical stories, it did feel a bit out of place here and would probably fit better in a Battlegrounds style of game. How about replacing them with the new kind of cinematic style matches that have been going on recently and have become really popular. They're still quite over the top and fantastical, but to a degree that fits in more with this style of game. Now it has to be said, the character select screen is an absolute slog. It's just a huge list that just takes far too long to get into the wrestler you want to pick, and the categorization doesn't help at all. It's time to return to a tiled format, just like most fighting games, in particular Smash Bros. The tiles would be so much easier, and you can color code them depending on what show the character appears on. Personally, I prefer the aesthetic of tiles as well. Less isn't always more, and please, dear God, can we make the controls simpler? It just feels like the control scheme doesn't want me to use half of the moves I have available to me. It's really weird, and it just needs streamlining. Now this one is a biggie. GM or General Manager mode was hugely popular back in the day, and with the hugely entertaining Battle of the Brands on Up Up Down Down, it has just reinvigorated that love, and it is long past time that mode return. While Universe mode is fine, it does lack a lot, mostly due to how it does feel a bit half-baked. Not necessarily replacing it, but adding to it with a fully fledged, fleshed out GM mode is the clearest home run the devs could hit. Even if the rest of the game sucked, a GM mode would have swayed a lot of favour towards visual concepts. Now the GM mode would obviously have two uses. You would obviously have the regular GM mode, like a Football Manager Lite for single player use, even having you negotiate roster swaps with other brands, because oh do I want to manage NXT. And on the other side of the coin, you of course would have the online GM mode, where you'd either go up against a friend for GM of the year like the good old days, or you'd put your booking seals to the test against randomers to have your name on top of the online leaderboard. Customization has always been at the heart of the WWE games, especially the 2K ones. They have been a standout for the most part. Now, while the live service model would negate this a little, the customized options do need a bit of an overhaul. Less so on created characters, although that could do with a bit of an update. More so for the wrestlers already in-game, as there's not a huge amount you can do to customize them. Say, for instance, your favourite wrestler gets a new haircut and you wanted the game to reflect that. Well, nope, sorry, can't do that. The create a whatever mode needs to be updated on the whole. While it would of course never look quite as good as something pre-designed for the game, the difference in quality can be quite bad. For the most part, I stayed away from creating that much in-game. One, because of the amount of time it would take to actually load the created parts, and two, because they just looked really out of place and it became distracting after a while. And finally, let's sort out the roster a touch, shall we? Firstly, while yes, I do tend to hold out for the Game of the Year edition so I can unlock all the characters I'll probably never use, how about having them be unlockable the good old fashioned way, by beating them either in a career mode, showcase, or road to WrestleMania? It gives a little bit of an achievement to it then. Now, we did get a little bit of this in 2K20 with having to beat the Bump in the Night story before you could use the Fiend, as well as multiple attires and movesets being put behind the walls of the showcase mode. But having actual unlockables just adds incentive to actually play the game. Also, let's stop with the whole different versions of current roster members occupying a separate space in the roster, because they shouldn't. I get they've done it so they can have different entrances, musics, movesets, whatever. It's also done just so they could be like, we've got X amount of wrestlers, when you don't. You've just copied and pasted and added some new clothing items. That's just cheating, 2K. Stop it. Also, WWE have a huge wealth of legends, and they constantly celebrate that with their yearly Hall of Fame ceremony, as well as shoehorning them into every single show they possibly can, validated or not. So why is it we only get the same few constants in games while others get rotated out? Why is Mick Foley in one year and out the next? Where is Vader, Owen Hart, Yokozuna, Road Warriors? I could go on. And will. Jushin Thunder Liger, Jeff Jarrett, Rikishi, Honky Tonk Man, DDP, British Bulldog, Mr. Perfect, Ted DiBiase, Umaga. I get that some are working in different promotions, that's fine, whatever. But do this for the greater good. Just like Smash Bros, invite them all to the party. NXT also needs to have a much heavier presence in the next title, as it is genuinely the best thing going under the WWE banner, and has been for a very long time. There are always some omissions that are so glaring it nearly blinds you scrolling through the NXT roster. While these changes wouldn't make 2K22 perfect, it would put the series back on the right track for visual concepts to build on and steer the ship out to smooth waters before they inevitably hit that massive iceberg out in the distance once again.